It's the Beth Cahill Show. And now, here's Beth.
Good morning and welcome to another week of the Beth Cahill Show. So just like every week covering American politics, where the news cycle never seems to stop, today is no different. We have a packed 30 minutes starting with some news coming out of downtown Seattle, where King County has just approved an emergency $600,000 to ramp up security around the courthouse. If you haven't heard, there was a brutal, unprovoked attack the day before Thanksgiving on 3rd Avenue in front of the courthouse where a defense attorney was punched repeatedly in the head outside of this building. A Seattle Metro bus driver who tried to stop the assault was then also hit in the head and knocked to the ground. So the following Monday, King County Superior Court's presiding judge responded to this incident by closing the entrance to the building. He said he knew this was not a long-term solution, but that these attacks have been increasing and are becoming a weekly occurrence. There were about a dozen employees who work in that building that came forward after the attack and said that they had also feared for their safety when coming to work. Between January and September, police have responded to 160 assaults on the 3rd Avenue block the courthouse is on. So it's important to note what surrounds this building, right? Across the street, you have Downtown Emergency Services Center, which serves chronically homeless men and women with mental health issues. Down the block from there is another homeless shelter, and a few feet from there is the Union Gospel Mission. So does any of this, none of this is a surprise, right? It's no secret that downtown Seattle and the outerlying areas have been hit incredibly hard with homelessness and crime. In fact, Seattle is one of the leading cities in the nation for both of these areas. Certainly not an area that we are proud to lead in. So the reason that I cover this story, it's not to say that added security is not needed, because of course it is. It's needed everywhere. We should have more law enforcement officers on every block in downtown Seattle. I've been a proponent of this since day one. The issue that I take with this, however, is that there are small business owners and employees dealing with this same thing every single day. I've covered it on this show extensively. These business owners are being forced to either leave downtown Seattle, where their business has been for decades, and move their business to a safer location, or if they're not fortunate enough to have the means to do that, they have to stay in their location and risk this same type of assault on a daily basis. They don't have the luxury of security around them or funds that can be allocated to protect them when security is just not enough. The crime in Seattle, it has been something that has continued to rise, and our leadership continues to not take the appropriate measures to fix it. The lax policies on crime and drug use in this city continue to hurt every citizen. They hurt the innocent people who are assaulted, stolen from, or worse, every day, and they do nothing to help the perpetrator of these crimes. They don't hold them accountable. So what happens when you know you can get away with something? Well, you continue to do it. Leadership continues to fail in the effort to get these people the help that they deserve. The answer is not more money to protect the courthouse. The answer is better policy. And until that is understood, what has been done has just moved the problem of crime and assaults down a couple blocks, where, you know what, those workers in those buildings, they don't have access to the security that they're going to now need. So hopefully this will serve as a wake-up call to leadership. It's a travesty when your own government can no longer even protect their own government buildings. But I say welcome to downtown Seattle, where the people have been saying this for years now. So hopefully now that it's affecting them, they can move into the direction of change in policy. So let's move on to some national news. There's been some big stories this week that need to be covered. The House members have just voted to move the impeachment hearing out of the Judiciary Committee and to the House for a full vote. There were 23 votes yes and 17 votes no on a full party line vote. So let's be clear about something. That is the first time in American history that there has been a vote to impeach a president based solely on party lines. And it should be the last. It's a disgrace. So what this means now is that it's headed to the House floor for a full vote. It's expected next Wednesday. They haven't officially said what day it's going to happen, but from everything that I'm hearing, it's going to happen on Wednesday. So that's going to pass. It's going to pass the House. There is some reporting out there suggesting that some moderate Democrats are getting cold feet. They may vote with Republicans to not move forward with impeachment. We're going to have to wait and see how that shakes out because it's just we don't know yet. So here's where we are. The Democrats wrote up 2 articles of impeachment. They plan to impeach the president on 2 things: obstruction of Congress and abuse of power. So bribery is out. That's right. After months of hearing how the president committed a quid pro quo, then it was extortion, then bribery. And after all of that, the Democrats aren't moving forward with any of those things in the articles of impeachment. What a joke. It's all we've heard about for weeks in these public trials until it wasn't, until the witnesses said they had no actual firsthand evidence of any of it. I'm going to play you a clip from Representative Matt Gaetz out of Florida, who I think he sums this up really well, and then we can react to it.
This is the quickest, thinnest, weakest, most partisan impeachment in all of American presidential history. And for all the radical left's attacks on the president's honesty, it's their lies that continue to fuel this scorched earth strategy of impeachment. When a member of this committee said that President Trump was an agent of the Russian government engaged in a criminal conspiracy with the Russians, he lied. Needing a new way to undermine our president, the Democrats said he obstructed justice. But they couldn't make the case. They didn't have the facts. And there are no obstruction of justice articles in this impeachment. So needing another new distraction, Chairman Schiff announced a whistleblower. He said we'd hear from this person about bad presidential conduct. Some in the media reported on the whistleblower, raising serious concerns about political bias, improper motivation, and scandalous coordination with a political hit job aligned with none other than the operatives of Chairman Adam Schiff. With public opinion turning against impeachment, the Democrats scurried to assemble focus groups and commission polls. They learned that accusing the president of bribery would be good politics. While Democrat House members are willing to follow the pundits and consultants, the evidence and the witnesses were not. Even their seemingly most anti-Trump witness, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, said, "I was never involved in anything that I would consider bribery or extortion." Lo and behold, there are now no bribery articles in this impeachment. Another lie. But the biggest lie of all was that House Democrats would not put our beautiful nation through a partisan impeachment. Speaker Pelosi said there must be evidence that is compelling and bipartisan. Chairman Nadler said impeachment should not be partisan. And tonight, they stubbornly defy the standard that they set for themselves.
So the Democrats spent so much time telling us for the last 3 years of all of the crimes that this president has committed. Campaign finance violations, bribery, extortion, colluding with the Russians, being a Russian agent, treason, and the list goes on and on and on. Racism. How could I forget racism? So now it's their time, right? It's finally time for them to get rid of this president. And what do? They write up articles of impeachment that has no crime. I mean, this is the first time in American history we will impeach a president with no crime, no statutory crimes whatsoever in the articles of impeachment. The first article of impeachment is obstruction. Democrats say that Trump defied Congress by not answering to subpoenas. But what is laughable about this is that Democrats, as Mark Thiessen rightly points out in the Washington Post piece, is that these are equal branches of government. The Democrats don't get the last word when the president of the United States invokes executive privilege. When something like this happens, and there's a power struggle, if you will, between the 2 branches of government, the president then has a legal right to appeal to the 3rd branch of government, the judiciary. And that's exactly what happened here. That is what Trump did, as is his constitutional right. If he appeals to the courts and loses, at that point, the Democrats can hold him in obstruction of Congress, and that is their right. But that didn't happen. The Democrats did not wait for the courts on this. They just plowed forward, given no thought to the legal process here. As for the second article of impeachment, abuse of power, which is not a statutory crime, No violation of the law is actually even being alleged here. Democrats argue that impeachment is political, not legal. Okay, then, if that's what you want to do, then do it. But their job was then to convince the American people on that. And as the polling states today, it doesn't seem as if that worked very well at all. So if you are just tuning in, you are listening to the Beth Cahill Show, and we are going through articles of impeachment and where the polling is standing on this. And the polling, as it states now, it's not boding well for the Democrats. Even national polling, which I didn't ever think would shift in the direction for the president, has now shifted. It's now nationally 51% of people do not believe that the president should be impeached, to 45% in favor. Keep in mind, it's really important to understand this, that when the hearings began in October, the polling showed that 48 to 46 supported impeachment. It's an even darker picture for the Democrats when you go state by state, especially the swing states President Trump needs to win in order for re-election. You have Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin with only 40% supporting impeachment. That's the blue wall, right? That's the blue wall that before 2016 was supposed to be the firewall for Democrats that Republicans could not break through until they did, until President Trump won all of those states. So you have all of this going on, right? You've got impeachment on one hand. Meanwhile, you have President Trump, who has arguably had his best week ever. The USMCA trade deal has passed. That is a big bipartisan win. It's a win for the American people. You have paid family leave getting passed, a jobs report adding 266,000 new jobs. The economy is roaring. The China deal is well on its way to coming through. The spending bill came through, which averted a government shutdown. You've got Space Force. I mean, this was a great week for this president. And it's part of why I believe polling is showing the support for impeachment dropping. Whether this is true or not, the Democrats like to say that they can walk and chew gum at the same time, which, by the way, I believe that line should really be retired from politics. You have on one side the Democrats talking about how they can govern at the same time as investigate or impeach the president, whatever it seems like they want to do that week. But it doesn't look that way. What can this Congress really say that they've done? They held up USMCA for a year, knowing that it was hurting American workers, only to then pass it in the House the same day they announced articles of impeachment. Nancy Pelosi was asked about the timing of this and whether it was coincidental or not. And here is her response.
No, it's not a coincidence. It's just as we get to the end of a session, there have to be some decisions made. The timetable for impeachment is the timetable of the committees. And that came to an end with the hearing yesterday. But for us, this has been, we didn't know what day it would be, but the trade representative, Ambassador Lighthizer, who was quite remarkable to work with, he shared our values. He understood why we could not accept the Trump administration product. And he wanted to get this signed by the Mexicans and the Canadians. When you're dealing with something like this, it could be perishable. So he wanted to close while we were all in agreement, and therefore we came to agreement as.
So no one actually believes that. No one believes that this was not coincidental. No one believes that it was by accident that it all happened at the same time. The moderate Democrats needed the win of USMCA. They were begging for it. They were begging for her to pass that. They especially need it because they're getting an earful from their constituents about impeachment. I'm going to share with you another clip from some voters in Pennsylvania that a reporter from NBC spoke with outside of the Trump rally regarding impeachment. So here's what some of the Pennsylvania voters are saying.
Hey there, Hallie. Exactly. So perhaps unsurprising after all these months of being at rallies and talking to the president's fiercest supporters who maintain that the president did nothing wrong, we caught up with them right after that press conference you referenced earlier and talked to them about their feelings of these two articles of impeachment. Folks basically were defiant and dismissed them, which is something we've heard time and time again. But the overarching theme has to do with exactly the reason we're here today in Hershey, and that is because of the president's re-election campaign. these supporters actually believe that the impeachment headlines from today will only harden his support heading into 2020. Take a listen to what a few of them told us ahead of the president's rally tonight.
They've been digging at this even before he was elected, so I think they're just grabbing for straws that aren't there.
You can see how upset I am. I'm telling you right now, there are people out here that are so enraged. We are so fed up. And so, of course, we're going to be stronger, even coming back to vote for President Trump again.
So this is what you hear time and time again from voters in these swing states. The Democrats failed to make the case that this was actual wrongdoing from Trump. And instead, in a way, they sort of vindicated the president by not impeaching him for actual statutory crimes. The entire process ended up looking like they were impeaching this president because they didn't like him. And they have contempt for Trump voters. They have contempt for Trump voters just as much as they have contempt for Trump. Make no mistake about that. This past week, you started to hear Democrats make a shift in talking points. You heard them now saying that if they don't impeach Trump, then they run the risk of not having a fair election in 2020. Take a listen to Jerry Nadler here.
Let me ask you this. If he's acquitted, do you believe we'll have a fair election in 2020?
I don't know. The president, based on his past performance, will do everything he can to make it not a fair election. And that is part of what gives us the urgency to proceed with this impeachment.
So I first want to say what a wild talking point that is. There was no vote changed in 2016 by a foreign government, and to suggest that is completely irresponsible, especially coming from someone like Jerry Nadler. No, what this is really about is the Democrats not trusting the American people to make the right choice in the 2020 election. This is about them not liking the choice that was made in 2016. This is them saying, don't worry, you ignorant voters. We'll come in and we'll help you with your vote. We'll help you with your vote by impeaching Trump. They want to wound Trump as much as possible going into re-election. They know this is going nowhere in the Senate. This is about wounding Trump. The contempt for Trump voters never seems to surprise me. I do want to take a listen to Jim Jordan speak to this because I think he speaks to this very, very well.
They're never going to stop with their attacks because they can't stand the fact that President Trump is actually draining the swamp and doing what he said he would do, and most importantly, getting results. Taxes cut, regulations reduced, economy growing at an unbelievable pace, lowest unemployment in 50 years, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh on the court, out of the Iran deal, embassy in Jerusalem, hostages home from North Korea, and oh, by the way, a new NAFTA agreement coming any day now. They can't stand it, and they're never going to stop. And it's not just because they don't like the president. It's not just because they don't like the president. They don't like us. They don't like the 63 million people who voted for this president. All of us in flyover country, all of us common folk in Ohio, Wisconsin, Tennessee, and Texas, they don't like us.
So I think he sums it up very well. I do think that there is a major contempt from the media, from Democrats, for Trump voters. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. They don't disparage just Trump. They disparage the people that voted for him too. So what now? Right? What now? So we have the impeachment. They're going to formally vote for this on Wednesday. And how this moves forward is the House is going to vote to impeach. It will then move to the Republican-controlled Senate for a trial. The Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, he actually has no choice but to take this up in the Senate. But unlike what we've seen in the last month or so with the Democrats in charge of the hearings, it's now going to be Chief Justice Roberts from the Supreme Court, who he'll preside over this in the trial in the Senate. So think of it as an actual trial, right? Because that's what this is. Both sides will be able to call witnesses as they see fit. There will be legal representation for the president if that's the way they choose to move forward. The other option is to keep it really clean and basically take a vote right when it gets to the Senate, make it go away really fast. I want to play one clip for you from Lindsey Graham and his thoughts on how he believes that this should move forward once it hits the Senate, and then we'll talk about it.
On Capitol Hill this morning, and we'll get it back to that in just a moment. You've been live tweeting during that, Senator. And just a few moments ago, you tweeted, if House Democrats are looking for an abuse of power, they should look in the mirror. What did you mean by that?
I mean, this is the first impeachment in history conducted by partisans. The Intel Committee gathered the facts. The president's lawyer was excluded from participating in the Intel Committee. The House Republicans on Intel were denied the ability to call any any witnesses. They couldn't find anything about the whistleblower. This started with an anonymous complaint. They couldn't look as to whether or not there's real corruption on behalf of Hunter Biden. All that was shut down. It moves to the Judiciary Committee. They have a hearing with 4 law professors. After that hearing, given 4 opinions, Nancy Pelosi moves to articles of impeachment. They shut the president out in the Judiciary Committee in terms of putting on the defense. So when this comes to the Senate, I'm going to treat it as the sham it is. For the future of the presidency itself, we need not legitimize this in the Senate, because what they've done in the House, I think, is a danger to the presidency. Behind closed door testimony, 90% of it hearsay.
So there's been some debate on how the White House should go forward with this, right? Everyone knows that it's dead on arrival in the Senate because they would need 2/3 of the senators to vote to impeach President Trump. The Republicans hold the majority. That's just not going to happen. So really the question becomes, how long does the White House want to drag this out? President Trump has said he wants this to be a full trial where they call for witnesses. He wants to see Adam Schiff, Hunter Biden, even Joe Biden come up to Capitol Hill and answer questions on what's gone on here. He believes that the facts are on his side, and he wants to expose the other side of this. I disagree with this strategy. Although it is very tempting to see these people come to the stand and have to answer questions on their conduct, whether Adam Schiff met with the whistleblower, the inquiry into Hunter Biden and, his time on the board of Burisma, those are fascinating answers that you'd want to hear. But I think the president should just do as Lindsey Graham is suggesting and let this go in and out of the Senate as quickly as possible. And here's why. As it stands today, the president has the polling on his side, as the majority of the American people do not want to see him impeached. He also has independents very much on the side of him. We all knew how Republicans were going to feel and Democrats. Independents, were the kind of the wild card to see where that was going to go. And they're on the side of no impeachment. He has swing state voters saying they don't want impeachment. You have an impeachment that is solely party line right now, which is a big mistake from the Democrats. He has Republicans united. None are expected to vote yes on impeachment. As I outlined today, he has a ton of victories legislatively right now as well. I say take the win and move on. People are tired of it. Don't gamble in the hopes to bring public opinion down even more on the Democrats. Just take this victory and continue to show the American people why they voted for you in the first place. That would be my advice to the president. Focus on the economy, healthcare, immigration, school choice, infrastructure. And I believe if that is what Republicans do, re-election will be well on the way for them come 2020. So lastly, I want to talk about the amazing victory in Europe for Boris Johnson and the Conservatives. They won 365 seats, giving them a massive majority. This means Brexit should finally be able to get done. It was a campaign promise he ran on, and with this victory, it looks as if it's going to get done. Up until now, you had a divided parliament, right? They've refused to back the withdrawal, but this victory, they now have enough lawmakers on the conservative side to push this through literally 3.5 years after it was voted on. So now it is all but certain that the United Kingdom will leave the EU on January 31st. Make no mistake, this was disastrous for the Socialist Labor Party. It was their worst performance in 3 decades. Some wonder if this is a sign of things to come in 2020 in American politics. So that is it for me today, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you back here next week.
This has been the Beth Cahill Show. If you have any feedback for Beth or would like to suggest a future topic or guest for the show, email beth@thebethcahillshow.com. That's Beth at the Beth Cahill, spelled Cahill show.com. Tune in again next Saturday morning at 9 for more of the Beth Cahill Show, right here on AM 1590. The Answer.